So we are on DAF Yud Beis Amud Aleph, and we were talking about yesterday about the subjectivity of tsaras to different structures depending upon whether they were publicly owned or privately owned structures. And the Gemara had offered as a suggestion, because we saw a stira, we saw a contradiction in brises. One brisa says that a synagogue, a Beis HaKnesses, is subject to tsaras, and another brisa said it's not subject to tsaras. The Gemara had offered three different explanations as to reconcile, but one of the reconciliations is that we're talking about two different kinds of synagogues. One is a synagogue of a village shul, and the other one is a big city shul. The difference being is that a village shul has multiple users, but at least you can identify it's a finite number of people. And therefore, because of its finiteness in its users, it's considered to be something that is subject to tsaras. When you have a synagogue that has people coming in and out from all different parts of the world because it's in a big metropolitan area, it really belongs to nobody, and it doesn't have a membership, and therefore it's considered to be no man's shul, and as a result it cannot be subject to tsaras. So now the Gemara says, first line in Yud Beis Amud Aleph, Udekrachim ein metame b'negoyim. So you mean to tell me that a big city shul is not subject to tsaras? V'hatanya, look at the following brisa. Achuz aschem. The Torah says that I shall place a tsaras in the house of your inheritance. So what does inheritance mean? Achuz aschem metame b'negoyim. Ve'ein Yerushalayim metame b'negoyim. So the Tanakama says that what that word teaches me is that only the city of Yerushalayim, which was never split up, which was never apportioned to the tribes, which was what we'll see shortly, any structure in Yerushalayim is not subject to Negoyim because it's not part of the inheritance of any one member of the Jewish people. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ani lo shamati el makom mikdash bilvad. And Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says it's not all the city of Yerushalayim, because as we'll see, there is an opinion that says that Yerushalayim was apportioned, but only the makam of the Beis HaMikdash, he says, does not contract tsaras. So now the Gemara says, that's the conclusion of the brisa, but what do we infer from there? Habate kinesios ubate midrashos mitame b'negoyim. The only thing that is being excluded is either all of Yerushalayim or just the temple. But there's no exclusion just because it's a synagogue that is ownerless, because if that were the case, then achuzaschem, your inheritance, should also exclude synagogues. But we don't exclude synagogues based on that word. So it sounds like from this brisa that a synagogue, even of a big city ownerless synagogue, still contracts tsaras. Even if they're part of a big city. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ani lo shamati el makom mekudash bilvad. So the Gemara suggests as an answer that when Rabbi Yehuda disagrees and he says, I only heard the place of the Beis HaMikdash, he doesn't mean just the Beis HaMikdash, he means makom mekudash with a shuruk, which means that any sanctified place, like a synagogue, because it's used by the masses, is not subject to tsaras because it is considered ownerless. And that's the way you'd have to learn Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, the brisa that says that a big city synagogue is not subject to tsaras is in accord with Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara now asks, B'mai kamiflagi, what's the machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda as to whether structures in Yerushalayim contract tsaras or not? Tanakama sarva Yerushalayim lo niskalka l'shvatim, and Rabbi Yehuda sarva Yerushalayim niskalka l'shvatim. The machlokes is very simple. Was the city of Yerushalayim apportioned to any specific tribes or not? According to the Tanakama, it was not, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, it was. As we'll see, Yerushalayim, according to Rabbi Yehuda, was divided up. Part of it, the lion's share, went to Yehuda, no pun intended, and a smaller portion went to Binyamin, as we'll see momentarily. Uvepluk the Dahni Tanoi, and it's the machlokes of the following Tanoi. The Tanya, Mahaya Bechelko Shel Yehuda, Har Habayis Halishkos V'Ha'azaros, Umahaya Bechelko Shel Binyamin, Ulam V'Heichalu Beis Kodshei HaKodshim. That the brisa says, when we look at Yerushalayim, and more specifically the Temple Mount, we see that that's the dividing line between the portion of Yehuda and the portion of Binyamin. And not only that, but the place of the Beis HaMikdash itself was the dividing line between Yehuda and Binyamin. that the portion of Yehuda was the entire Temple Mount, everything at least that is east of the Holy of Holies, all of the chambers, all of the courtyards, that's all part of Yehuda's portion. What's in the portion of Binyamin? Anything west of the courtyards, meaning that you look at the covered portion of the temple, the Ulam and the Heichal, that's all part of Binyamin's portion. And as Rashi points out, even a swath of courtyard that's immediately in front of the Ulam also belongs to Binyamin. However, Uritsuya Haisa Yotza Mechelko Shel Yehuda V'Nechneses Lechelko Shel Binyamin Uba Haya Mizbeach Banoi. But what happened is that Yehuda had a protruding a section, like a sliver of property that protruded out of Yehuda's dividing line to include and encompass the area of the Mizbeach. So basically, Yehuda went all the way up to the Ulam where the Mizbeach was, and was a little bit back on the where the sides of the Mizbeach was, to show you that Yehuda was given a special chelek of the Mizbeach. He was given that special portion. So Ubinyamin Atzadik Hayam Mitzdayer Aleha Labala Abachol Yom. And Binyamin the Tzaddik, and it seems like Binyamin HaTzaddik means that even while he's alive, historically, Binyamin saw prophetically that he would only get the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Heichal and the Ulam, and he would not get the Mizbeach. And he was chalashing. He wanted to, every day, he wanted to swallow it up. And what that means is, of course, is a much deeper meaning about the function of the Bnei Rachel and the Bnei Leah, which we don't have time to go into today. But the point is that Binyamin feels that he wants that Mizbeach also. And Shenamar Chofeif Alav Kol Hayom, and therefore that's why the bracha that Moshe Rabbeinu gives to Binyamin is that he is one who hovers over the entire day.
Yaakov gave.
No, this is the one that Moshe Rabbeinu gives to. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu gives to Binyamin. Levinyamin Omar, Yedid Hashem Yishkon Levetach Alav, Chofeif Alav Kol Hayom Levein Keseifav Shachein. That's in Vizos HaBracha. So Moshe gives this to the Shevet of Binyamin, and he says that he's hovering over it all day. Lefichach Zacha Binyamin Hatzadik Venasa Ushpizchan Legevura. But the very fact that Binyamin is chalashing to have that chelik of the Mizbeach, which represents the avoda to Hashem, he's rewarded instead with having the chelik of the Kodesh HaKadoshim in his portion, so that he becomes the host of the divine presence. Meaning what? Meaning because that's where the divine presence rests in between the two kruvim in the Holy of Holies. Shenamar uvein keseifav shachein, as the pasuk continues and says that he shall dwell between his shoulders, meaning right in the midst of Binyamin, between the two kruvim. V'hai Tana Savar. So that's one Tana. That Tana goes like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the Beis HaMikdash and Yerushalayim is divided among the Shvatim. However, V'hai Tana Savar Yerushalayim lo nischalka l'Shvatim. But now I have another brisa that goes like the Chachamim, who say that Yerushalayim is ownerless and it was never divided among the Shvatim. The Tanya, Ein maskirin batim b'Yerushalayim lefi she'eino shalahen. The brisa says you're never allowed to rent out an apartment or a house in Yerushalayim. You know why? Because it doesn't belong to you. You can't rent out something that doesn't belong to you. And so there was a permanent law that you can't own anything in Yerushalayim, which probably, I don't know if there's ramifications today, maybe in a shtar.
Well, they actually today have, you can't own property there.
Well, in all of Eretz Yisrael, you have a 99-year lease. Yeah, but this is specific to Yerushalayim, however. And Rabbi Lazar Bar Shimon Omer, Aflo mitos, you can't even rent out a bed. So you can't really take any money for a guest. And lefichach oros kachim bali ushpezichnin notlin osan bizroa. And he says, and the Brisa concludes that it's for that reason that the practice became that when a person would be visiting Yerushalayim to bring a korban, let's say a korban shlomim, and normally the bringer of the korban gets to keep the hide, you'd have to give up the hide to your host, since he can't charge you for your night stay. He instead sort of compensates you as a gratuity. In other words, he can't take real payment, but he can take a gratuity. And the gratuity is this, he gives you the hide. And it became, the minhag is that he can take it even bal karcha, that he can forcibly confiscate it because it became such an accepted practice.
So people that live near Yerushalayim own their places, or they just happen to live there?
Well, technically you don't own it, but if you build a house, I guess maybe eminent domain or whatever it was, whatever allowed them to eventually settle in those places, people had homes in Yerushalayim, but halachically it really doesn't belong to them. So they're just squatters.
You can rent and you can sell? We were talking about renting, selling as well.
You can't, so for sure you can't sell.
If
you can't rent, you for sure can't sell. It doesn't belong to anybody.
But if you build a structure, you could sell the structure, not the land.
No, that's exactly the point. You can't even rent a bed. You can't even rent a bed. Nothing having to do with real estate can you take money for. So Amar Abai Yishma Mina Urach Ara Lamishbak Inish Gulfa Umashcha Luushpize. So the Gemara says that Abai says you learn from here a rule of Derech Eretz which extends beyond Yerushalayim, and that is that when someone is staying as a guest at your house, it's proper Derech Eretz for the guest to leave some kind of gratuity or gift. He should leave the hide from the animal that he's eating, and he should leave this little jugs that he no longer needs.
And a bottle of wine.
Right. Today we bring a bottle of wine and flowers, but the point is that this minhag of leaving a gift for your guest goes all the way back to the times of the Gemara. So, it's not just a nice Western practice. It's from the times of the Gemara as well. So now the Gemara says, "Udikfarimi metame binagoyim." So frak the Gemara. Now we're going to ask another question. So we've established that a truly public synagogue of a big city is not subject to tsaras. But the Gemara now asks in the other direction. Are you telling me that if it's a village shul, that it is subject to tsaras? That doesn't ring true based on the following. V'hatanya la'achuza ad sheyichbeshu osa. The Brisa starts off by saying that the word achuza in the pasuk teaches me that there's no laws of tsaras habayis until the Jewish people actually conquer Eretz Yisrael. So during those initial years of Yehoshua, when he was in the course of conquest, the laws of tsaras did not apply. Kapshu osa v'lo chalkuha l'shvatim, and furthermore, the first 7 years of Yehoshua was they were conquering. The second 7 years was they were dividing it up and apportioning it to individuals. So even if after they conquered it, but they haven't divided it up among the tribes, or even if they divided the land among tribes, but the tribes themselves did not apportion it to which clans within the tribes would get the land, which pieces, and and even if they divided it among the clans, but the clans themselves did not award it to each individual family, so but people don't recognize where my house is going to be, where my property is going to be. Minayin, how do you know that still the laws of tsaras are not yet extant? Tamulomar uba asher lo habayis. So the word lo teaches me he who owns the house, meaning mi miyuchad lo yatsu elu shein miyuchadin lo. That the only time that tsaras applies is if a house is designated to one party. But if a house is not designated to an individual, then it's not subject to tsaras. So even if you have a village shul, but the fact that the village shul is for all of the members of the town and it's not owned by one entity, should itself constitute a reason why it's not subject to tsaras.
So Shvitzvus wouldn't work.
Well, that's a good point, Mendel. I try to sort of avoid that issue. I would argue that shutfus, maybe you could argue that shutfin is different from a Beis HaKnesset shel Kfarim, because shutfus at least is a corporate entity. Here, the Beis HaKnesset shel Kfarim, and I could be wrong, I haven't had the chance to research this, but perhaps you could argue that it's a little bit different because it's really a much looser kind of ownership. It's not like any member of a shul can say, I'm a stakeholder, so therefore give me my portion of the shul. You know what I'm saying? Whereas a partner can say, I want to dissolve the partnership, give me my half. Right? So I'm not sure. So Ella machvarta kedushanin me'ikara. So the Gemara says, you're right. Based on that brisa, even a village shul cannot contract tsaras, and therefore we'll have to resort to our other answers to reconcile the conflicting brises that we learned about yesterday, which was that one brisa says that a synagogue is subject to tsaras, and another brisa says a synagogue is not subject to tsaras. So one reconciliation was this: the differences between a village shul and a city shul. The Gemara says that's not a good answer, because in neither case is it subject to tsaras. But we'll go to our previous answer, which was that one is where there's a shamas's residence, where the shamas resides there, and the other one is where the shamas does not reside there. When the shamas doesn't reside there, there's no residence there, so it's not subject to tsaras. But when the shamas resides there, it is subject to tsaras. Okay, that concludes that discussion of tsaras and of mezuzah. Now let's go back to the Mishnah. Umaskinun lo kohen acher. Remember, we said you have to have an understudy kohen in order to be able to take over in the event that the kohen gadol develops a mum or becomes tameh at the last minute. So the Gemara, or dies, right? So the Gemara now says, Pshita irabo psul koidem tamid shel shachar mechanchin oso b'tamid shel shachar. So the Gemara now says, and by the way, the premise of the Gemara that we're going to be discussing now is that the Gemara is working under the assumption that you need to do something to inaugurate this understudy who's going to be taking over on Yom Kippur Day. You need to do something to demonstrate that he's the Kohen Gadol. And if you don't do something to demonstrate that he's the Kohen Gadol, then it's problematic. So if something happens to the regular Kohen before he had a chance to offer the morning daily tamid, then it's very easy to demonstrate that the understudy is the new Kohen Gadol. Why? Because the new Kohen Gadol will put on the 8 vestments of the Kohen Gadol to offer the daily tamid. But Ella irabo psul acher tamid shel shachar b'mechanchin. The problem is that let's say the Kohen Gadol, the regular Kohen Gadol, already did the avoda of the korban tamid of the morning. What is supposed to happen next? For all of the unique avoda of Yom Kippur, he's supposed to wear 4 vestments that are white, just like a regular Kohen. So the problem is, how does this understudy, who's now just coming in after the Tamid Shel Shachar has been offered, how does the understudy Kohen demonstrate that he's now the Kohen Gadol if he's wearing just the same vestments as any other Kohen? It's one thing if he had a chance to demonstrate that he's a Kohen Gadol by doing the Tamid Shel Shachar, because there he has got to wear the 8 vestments. But now that he's ready just to do the unique Yom Kippur avoda, and he's wearing regular Kohen clothes, how does he demonstrate that he's the Kohen Gadol? That's the question.
Shouldn't be wearing the tzitz?
No, there's no tzitz on Yom Kippur.
Cool.
Right? So Amar Rav Ada bar Ahava be'avneit. So Rav Ada bar Ahava says he'll demonstrate it by wearing the sash. Now remember, we had a machlokus back on DAF Vav last week. We talked about what is the sash of a regular Kohen made of. And there was a machlokus. Now we know that the Kohen Gadol normally wears a sash that is shatnez, and on Yom Kippur he wears a linen sash. What does a regular Kohen wear? We saw that there's a machlokus as to whether a regular Kohen during the entire year wears a linen sash or wears a shatnez sash. So the Gemara says, Hanich leman domer avneito shel Kohen Gadol zehu avneito shel Kohen Hedjot. If you learn that the sash that the Kohen Gadol wears, which is shatnez, is the same sash that a Kohen Hedjot wears, a regular Kohen wears, so then it's possible for this understudy to demonstrate that he's the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur by wearing a linen sash. This is not the sash that I would normally be wearing if I was a regular Kohen. I would normally be wearing a shatnez sash. So therefore, this sash that is pure linen demonstrates that I'm doing the avoda of the Kohen Gadol. However, but if you learn like the other opinion, which is that during the rest of the year, throughout the 365 days a year, a Kohen Hedjot wears a linen sash, then on Yom Kippur also, the Kohen Gadol wears a linen sash. So once again, you're back with the dilemma: how does this understudy now demonstrate that he's the Kohen Gadol if everything that he's wearing is exactly the same as what a Kohen Hedjot would be wearing during the year? Amar Abaye, Love Shmona umahapich bitzinora uchidaravuna. Abaye says there's a very simple solution. The morning tamid has already been offered. Let this understudy put on the 8 vestments for a very short period of time. Take a fork, go up to the ramp, and turn over one of the limbs that's burning on the mizbeach. That's all you need to do to demonstrate that you don't have to do a full sacrificial avoda. Just turn over one of the pieces of animal parts that's burning on the Mizbeach. You've demonstrated that you're a Kohen Gadol. And it's like Rav Huna says, the Amar Rav Huna, Zar Shahafech B'tzinora Chayiv Misa. Because Rav Huna says that's called an avoda to the point where if a non-Kohen were to do that, to take a fork and turn over a piece of meat, he would be chayiv misa b'dei shamayim for being a non-Kohen doing the avoda. So you see that that's called legitimate avoda. So Rav Papa disagrees fundamentally. He says you don't need to do anything because avodaso mechanchaso. He says that it's the avoda that the guy's doing on Yom Kippur which demonstrates that he's the Kohen Gadol. Even if he's wearing the regular 4 vestments of a regular Kohen, the very fact that he's working on Yom Kippur is in itself a demonstration that he's the Kohen Gadol, because the Torah only allows the Kohen Gadol to be working on Yom Kippur. And as an analogy, he says, Milo Tanya kol hakelim sha'asa Moshe mishichasan mikadshasan mikan va'ilach avodasan mechanchasan hachanami avodasan mechanchasan. He says, we know that when it comes to the ministering utensils that are used in the temple, when they were first manufactured by Moshe Rabbeinu, he anointed them with oil. But from that point onwards, anytime you needed to replace one of the utensils, you didn't have to anoint it. How did you sanctify it? By using it for the first time. So the same thing over here is, use him, have him do the work for the first time, and that in itself is demonstrative that he's the Kohen Gadol. Ki asa Rav Dimi Amar Avneito Shel Kohen Hedjot Rebbe v'Rebbe Lazar b'Reb Shimon. So a Rav Dimi comes along and he says that the makeup of the sash of a regular Kohen is the subject of a machlokus between Rebbe and Rebbe Lazar b'Reb Shimon. Chad Omer Shel Kilayim v'Chad Omer Shel Boots. One's or boats. Is it boats or boots? Boots. Okay. One says that boats is mud, I think, and boots is linen, right? So one says that it is shatnez, and the other one says that it's pure linen. So the Gemara now suggests which one is which. Tistayim de Rebbe hu de Amar shel kilayim. Let us prove from the following brisa that Rebbe is the one who says that the regular Kohen sash is made of shatnez. How can I prove it? Tanya, ein ben Kohen Gadol le Kohen Hedjot ela avnei divrei Rebbe. The brisa says that according to Rebbe, the only difference between the Kohen Gadol and the Kohen Hedjot is the sash. Rebbe Lazar, Reb Shimon Omer, af lo avneit, and he says no, even the sash is not different. So the Gemara now asks, let's clarify this brisa. Amos. What day of the year is the brisa referring to? Inema b'shar yemos hashana tu ve'ika. Kohen Gadol mishamish b'shmona v'hedjot b'arba. If you're telling me that it's talking about a day in January, then how can the brisa say that the only difference between the regular Kohen and a Kohen Gadol is the sash? How can you say that's the only difference? There are so many more differences. After all, the Kohen Gadol wears 8 vestments, and the regular Kohen wears 4 vestments. So, of course, it can't be referring to the rest of the year. It must be talking about Elalav b'Yom Kippurim. It must be talking about Yom Kippur, where they're both wearing 4 vestments that are white vestments. And therefore, the statement of the brisa is, according to Rebbe, that the only difference is that the Kohen Gadol wears pure linen, and the regular Kohen wears shatnez. So you see very clearly that Rebbe holds that the Kohen Hedjot has to wear shatnez, and therefore by process of elimination, Rebbe Lazar Reb Shimon holds that the Kohen Hedjot wears pure linen. Amri lo. So the Gemara says no, that's not necessarily the correct interpretation of the brisa. La'olam b'shar yemos hashana uvahanach d'shavin. Because maybe all the brisa means to tell you, the brisa could be talking about a day in January, and when it says what's the only difference between a regular Kohen and a Kohen Gadol, it means vis-a-vis those vestments that they share in common. So vis-a-vis those vestments that they share in common, which is the breeches, the turban, the sash, and the tunic, what is the difference between the two? And there, the Rebbe says, the only difference is the fabric of the sash, which during the rest of the year, the Kohen Gadol's is shatnez, and during the rest of the year, the Kohen Hedjot's is made of boots, is made out of linen. So therefore, it could be just the opposite. It could be that Rebbe holds that the Kohen Hedjot's sash is linen, and Rebbe Lazar Ber Shimon holds that the Kohen Hedjot's sash is shatnez. So you can't prove it from this brisa. Ki asa Rabin Amar Avneto Shel Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim Divrei Hakol Shel Boots B'Shar Yemos Hashana Divrei Hakol Shel Kilayim. Comes along Rabin, and he holds exactly like Rav Dimi. However, he spells it out explicitly. You see, with Rav Dimi, we were left guessing. We know there's a machlokus between Rebbe and Rebbe Lazar Reb Shimon, but we just don't know which one holds which. We know that one of them holds that the sash is pure linen. The other one holds that the sash is a mixture. We just don't know which one is which. Comes along Rabin and says, I'll clarify it. He says, on Yom Kippur, everyone agrees that the Kohen Gadol's sash is of linen. Everyone also agrees that during the rest of the year, the Kohen Gadol sash is made out of shatnez. Lo nachlaku ela bavneto shel Kohen Gadol bein b'shar yemos hashana bein b'yom kippurim. The machlokes is only what is the sash of the regular Kohen throughout the year. Sherebi Omer shel kilayim v'Rebbi Reb Shimon Omer shel butz. And here he says explicitly, Rebbe says that it's made out of shatnez, a regular Kohen's sash is shatnez, and Reb Shimon says a regular Kohen's sash is linen, just like the Kohen Gadol's on Yom Kippur. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak af ananomi tanina. We have a brisa that supports this as well, that Rebbe is the one who says that the regular Kohen sash is shatnez. How do I prove this? Because it says al bisaro. Now the Torah talks about the practice of Trumas Hadeshin, of removing every morning, taking a scoopful of ash from the Mizbeach and putting it on the side. And that's a protocol that's done at the first thing in the morning, and it's called the Trumas Hadeshin. And the Torah says that while he's doing this, he has to be wearing his vestments. Okay? And the way that the Torah writes this is that it says, "V'lovash hakohen midovad umichnes sevad yilbash al bisaro." The Torah uses the word lavash twice in the pasuk, which means he shall wear. And the brisa is bothered by why the verb lavash has to be mentioned twice. So matam alomer yilbash lahavi mitznefes va'avneit laharomas hadesh and divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda explains that since the only two vestments that are mentioned in the pasuk are the tunic and the breeches, it mentions the verb shall wear a second time to make sure that I know that it's not just the tunic and the breeches that he has to wear, he also has to wear his tunic and his sash. That's the purpose of the second verb yilbash. Rabbi Dosa Omer lahavi bigdei Kohen Gadol b'yom kippurim. Rabbi Dosa disagrees, and he says that no, the second verb yilbash is an allusion to a halacha having to do with Yom Kippur, that it's coming to tell me that the Kohen Gadol's clothing on Yom Kippur, shehin ksherin lekohen hedron, can be worn by a regular Kohen after Yom Kippur is over. Meaning that since the vestments of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur are identical with the clothing of a regular Kohen, it is permitted that once Yom Kippur is over and the Kohen Gadol is done with this clothing, then Yilbash, and a regular Kohen can wear his vestments. So Rebbe Omer Shtei Tshuvos Badavar. Rebbe says, I have two reasons to disagree with Rebbe Dosa and to say that he's mistaken. Chada de avneto shel Kohen Gadol b'yom kippurim lo zehu avneto shel Kohen Hedjot. First of all, says Rebbe, the vestments of the Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur are not identical with the vestments of a Kohen Hedjot. Va'od begadim shenishtamshu sabahen kedusha chamur tishamish ben kedusha kala. And second of all, how can you take something that was used to enter into the Holy of Holies on the holiest day of the year and use it for regular avoda? We know a principle of Malin B'Kodesh V'lo Maridin. You can only ascend in Kedusha, not descend. So therefore, that's another reason why a regular Kohen is not allowed to use those vestments. So Elamata Molamar Yilbash. So how does Rebbe learn the second verb Yilbash in the Pasuk? L'Rabos Esashechakin. It's to tell me that not only can he wear completely intact priestly vestments when doing the avoda, but he can even wear clothing that is somewhat worn through. In other words, even though normally we would expect that the priestly garments have to be completely intact and pristine in their quality, no, the halacha is that even if they're somewhat threadbare, somewhat worn through, they're still kosher as long as they have the semblance of the priestly vestments. That's what the word yilbash, the second word yilbash, is coming to explain. Now, the Gemara now points out, what do we see from here? If Rebbe holds that one of his arguments is that the vestments of the Kohen Gadol is not identical with the vestments of a Kohen Hedjot, in what way are they not the same? It must be that Rebbe holds that the sash of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur is pure linen, and the sash of the Kohen Hedjot during the year is shatnez, and that's why the Kohen Hedjot is not allowed to wear the vestments of the Kohen Gadol from Yom Kippur because the sash is not the same. That proves it QED. Now the Gemara says, Va'azda Rabbi Dosa l'taime. Now Rabbi Dosa is consistent. Rabbi Dosa, who said that a Kohen Hedjot is allowed to wear the leftover vestments from Yom Kippur, goes according to his reasoning. The Tanya v'hini cham sham, malamed shetu'unin geniza, and Rabbi Dosa omer shelo yishtamesh ben Yom HaKippurim acher. The Brisa brings a machlokes. The Tanakama says that when the Torah says v'hinicham sham, that when he takes off his vestments, when the Kohen Gadol after Yom Kippur is over, he takes off his vestments and places them there. What does it mean to place them there? So the Tanakama holds to place them there means they have to be eternally stored in Geniza. You have to store them away, never to use them again. And Rabbi Dosa disagrees. He says, no, you're allowed to use them again. You just can't use them for next year's Yom Kippur. But if another Kohen wants to use them, gesund to hate. So you see that Rabbi Dosa holds that you are allowed to use the leftover vestments from Yom Kippur. Tana Rabbona. And apparently Rabbi Dosa is not concerned of this issue of Malin B'Kodesh, because I guess as long as, and I'm offering this as a suggestion, I don't know this for certain, Rabbi Dosa would probably tell you that as long as it's being used in the Beis HaMikdash, there's no problem of Malin B'Kodesh, because it's all part of the Kedusha, it's all part of the Avoda. Tana Rabbanon, Irabo Pesul, Uminu Acher Tachtav, Rishon Choser LaAvodaso, Sheni, Kol Mitzvahs Kahuna Gedola, Olav Diver Reb Meir. Now we have an interesting brisa which is related to this principle of Malin B'Kodesh. The brisa says is that if the Kohen Gadol develops some kind of psul, he gets a temporary mum, or he becomes tameh, and they appoint the understudy to take his place temporarily, and then the Kohen Gadol recovers and he's able to go back to his station. So what do you do with the understudy? So the understudy remains a Kohen Gadol as well, and you're left with a situation where you basically have two Kohen Gadols, right? In other words, you can't demote the understudy, because once he's promoted, he can't be demoted. That's according to Rebbe Meir. But Rabbi Yossi Omer Rishon Chozer LaAvodaso Sheni Eino Ro'i Lo LaKohen Gadol V'Lo LaKohen Hedjot. Rabbi Yossi disagrees, and he says you restore the original Kohen Gadol to his post, and the understudy cannot be demoted, but he cannot maintain his status as the Kohen Gadol either. And as we'll see, it's because of this principle called Eva. You can't have two captains of one ship. You can only have, because it's going to create too much strife. And as a result, the Kohen Gadol goes back to being the Kohen Gadol. This Kohen Hedjot can't be demoted because you only ascend in Kedusha. He can't go back to what he was, but he also can't work as the Kohen Gadol. So he's basically in limbo.
For how long?
For how long? You'll see.
And he continues to be the understudy.
He continues to be the understudy, perhaps, yeah. But he cannot do the avodah on a regular basis. No, in perpetuity. Yeah, so now the Gemara says, Amar Rebbe Yossi, Masa b'Yosef ben Ilay made Tzipori, She'ira bo psul b'Kohen Gadol, Minuhu tachtav, Amar Chachamim Rishon Choser LaAvodaso, Sheni Eino Ro'i Lo LaKohen Gadol V'Lo LaKohen Hedjot. And Rabbi Yossi brings this Maisa. He says, I know of a fellow whose name was Yosef ben Ilay from the city of Tzipori. He was the understudy, and that's exactly what happened. He replaced the Kohen Gadol temporarily, and when the Kohen Gadol recovered, they restored the Kohen Gadol to his post, and Yosef ben Elam Nebuch was in limbo. He couldn't go back to being a regular Kohen, but he also had to have all of the chumras of a Kohen Gadol as well, so he couldn't do either. And Rashi also adds that in addition to not being able to do the avoda, he has all the chumras of a Kohen Gadol, which means he can't marry an almana, right? Because a Kohen Gadol, a regular Kohen can marry an almana. He just can't marry a divorcee. But a Kohen Gadol can't even marry a widow. And number two, he's not allowed to be metame, even for a close relative. By a regular Kohen, if a parent dies, he can be matami, he can go to the Levaya. But a Kohen Gadol, even if a parent is nifter, he can't be matami for them. So
no kuvid either.
What?
No kuvid.
No COVID. only restrictions. What kind of life is that? Okay. Anyway, so the Gemara now explains Kohen Gadol mishum Eva, and Kohen Hedjot mishum Malin b'Kodesh v'lo Maridim. He couldn't go back to being the Kohen. The understudy could not remain the Kohen Gadol because of the hostility or the strife that it's going to engender between himself and the regular Kohen Gadol, and he can't go back to being a regular Kohen because you only ascend, you don't descend in Kedusha.
Does that mean he would automatically become the Kohen Gadol down the road?
Wait a minute, you're going to see this now. Let's see. So you're asking good.
Okay.
Amar Rabba bar Barchana Amar Rabbi Yechanan halacha ka Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, that this guy is in limbo, and umoda Rabbi Yossi sheim avar va'avar avodas uksher, and Rabbi Yossi is also moda, that if this fellow, who's the understudy, would go ahead and do the avoda, then b'di'evet his avoda would would be kosher. In other words, if let's say he sneaks into the Beis HaMikdash one day, puts on the 8 vestments of a Kohen Gadol and does the avoda, it's a kosher avoda. Why? Because technically he really is a Kohen Gadol. The only reason we don't allow him to act as the Kohen Gadol is because of Eva, is because of the Ben Adam Lachavero aspect. But Ben Adam Lamakom, he really taka is a Kohen Gadol. And Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Halacha Kareb Yossi, Umoda Reb Yossi she'imeis rishon shechozer lavodasa. Then Rav Yehuda says the halacha is like Reb Yossi, that this guy's in limbo, but we agree that if the Kohen Gadol now dies, so this guy who was the understudy is automatically instituted now as the Kohen Gadol, and he can do the avoda as the Kohen Gadol. So the Gemara now says, Pshita, isn't that obvious? No, it's not so obvious, because Mahu Detema Havuleit Sara Michayim Kamash Malan. You might have thought that this guy would be a rival even during the lifetime. In other words, just think about it for a second. I'm the understudy Kohen, and I know that my friend the Kohen Gadol over here, as soon as he kicks the bucket, I'm next. So I say, Shloimi, there's something in the road over there. Why don't you walk that way? Look, walk a little closer to the edge of the cliff, because it's a beautiful view, right? Right? Yeah, back up a little bit. In other words, there's going to be this constant anticipation. When's the guy going to kick the bucket? Let's get it up.
You have it today. Who's the next Rebbe before the Rebbe's still alive?
Right.
They're fighting already over.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Right. Who's going to be the next Rebbe? I'm chalishing for him to go. Right. So that's going to cause strife. That'll cause strife even during their lifetime. So the chiddush is you don't have to worry about that.
But don't also the sons,
right? So you don't have to worry as long as there's no rivalry of kahuna gedola during the lifetime. Then that concern about strife that'll occur because I'm waiting for the guy to die, that we're not concerned about. Have a wonderful day.